Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Ed, the best college podcast, where we continue to explore the big questions about education, careers in the future, but most importantly, the show that is empowering minds one episode at a time. I'm still your host, Professor Chris. By the way, happy Veterans Day. Hat off to all our veterans there for all they do. Again, this is a segment, Ask Professor Chris, which means you are putting your questions in the comments in the YouTube as you watch this episodes of Let's Talk Ed, special edition Ask Professor Chris. And I promise I will answer all questions once again, so far as it's within the college realm. All right, so please put your comments in there and don't forget to subscribe. All right, today's edition of Let's Talk Ed, again, Ask Professor Chris, what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about grade appeal, how to appeal your grades. If you feel, okay, so let me kind of put this disclaimer out there. If you feel your grade is wrong, by all means, let's challenge it. Let's go through the appeal process. However, if you're looking for excuses, okay, to get out of probation, and by the way, probation doesn't happen overnight. You should see this coming. So maybe you're getting all D's and you think maybe there's a class that you should get a C. Chances are that is really not a solution for you to get out of your probation, okay? Probation usually means 3, 4, 5 classes are just not good, all right, that you need to correct. All right. On this topic, however, as you all know, I always start my episode with some statistics, but on this topic, unfortunately, there is not much data out there. And by data, I mean there are no data from institutions saying, hey, this semester or in the past year, this is the number of grade appeals or grade challenges we've had. It's not a good data for an institution to hold. They have records, by the way. They have records of this appeal process, but it's not a data that is just out there, okay? However, we know this happens quite a little bit. So let's get right into it by starting with the definition. So what is a grade appeal? A grade appeal basically is it's a request, right? It's a request made by the student to reconsider a course grade that the student believes is incorrect, prejudiced, or arbitrary, right? So incorrect basically means there's an error. Usually is the most common one and a quick fix. You know, you reach out to the instructor, Professor, I think I got a B on this here, but you give me a C, right? Very easy. It happens. To err is human, right? Prejudiced means there is an unfavorable opinion or feel informed by the instructor. Let me give you an example. My example to this to kind of help you understand the situation is this. Usually as instructors, we just don't like students who do not attend classes. So an instructor may make or come up with a reason based on your absence from his or her class. That is not grounds for that instructor to give you a lower grade if, once again, it's not stipulated within the syllabus. So let me replay this or rephrase this again. An instructor can make a decision, and you can be one of those smart students who never attends class, shows up, A's the exams. However, if this is not stipulated in the syllabus, the instructor cannot say, well, you know what, you never show up to my classes, so for that reason, I'm going to give you a C. If it's not in the syllabus. For example, if I didn't have this in my syllabus, but yet you don't show up to my class, you're AC in my class, and I don't like it, this does not give me grounds to lower your grade, okay? So this is a very good example of prejudice. Arbitrary basically means random choice or personal, you just feel like without any good reason or system. some reason, beyond the classroom, something that, is going on between you and the instructor, and the instructor decides, you know what, maybe I don't like you, for whatever reason, I'm going to give you this grade. So again, those are the three areas that usually, if you're thinking about appealing or changing your grade or challenging your grade, these are the three areas that usually they fall in. So let's look at the college policies when it comes to grade changes. It is different for every institution. It is different. But what is going to be the same is, one, the time frame. When can you appeal for a grade change? Okay. If you decide to go on with that, the next step is going to be the evidence that you, the students, have to provide. And then you have to, the third component is the grounds for the appeal. And of course, there's a process and the outcome. Okay. So there are these 5 steps. Even though the policies for the colleges may be different, there's always going to be a time frame. There's going to be the evidence component. There's going to be grounds for appeal, the process, and of course, the outcome. So we're going to go through all this here one at a time. Let's look at the eligibility criteria. Who can appeal for a grade change? So first, you're in the classroom. Anyone in the classroom with a student can definitely appeal for a grade change. What type of grades can you appeal or can be appealed? Anything that has a letter grade on it. So that means your homework, if some instructors usually like to do the A, B, or even if it's 100, 90, it's graded. So anything that is graded, you could actually challenge. But again, just letting everybody know that you could appeal basically for projects, assignments, teamwork, anything that has a letter grade, you can appeal for that. However, if this cumulatively contribute to a final grade, that is what usually students appeal. Now let's talk about some timelines. So at this point, we're really considering that you are probably 90% certain that you're moving forward with a grade appeal and you want to go through the process. There are a couple of timelines that you really want to consider. One is knowing in the institution's policy what the duration is. For example, for final grades, students always have to keep in mind, especially if you're a senior, instructors are required to send in their grades probably 2-3 days before graduation. Okay, so there's a very short window. If you're appealing your grades, usually it could be anywhere from 10 to 30 days, depending on the institution, and also, again, depending on where you are or what year you are in as a student. Because if you're a junior and you're going to be around, maybe you have a lot of time to appeal the grade while it goes through the process, and then eventually, again, you have time. If you're a senior, you really don't. So you want this process to move on very quickly, so you can move on. The other part of the timeline that I encourage students to always watch out for is also if the course you are appealing for is a prerequisite. You want this to happen very quickly, and that means you also want to know how long the process is going to take. You want to know the outcome before the registration deadline. Because if it's a prerequisite, it's a class that you have to take before, or you have to pass before you take the next class, that means you're not able to register. If it's not a prerequisite, usually what I tell students is, by the way, you can still register for the class or register for other classes. The fact that you are appealing for a course doesn't mean you wait. You don't register for all of the classes. No, it's just only one class that you are appealing, so you should please go on and register for your other classes while you're waiting for the process to go through. Okay. Now, I'm assuming that we are 110% certain that you have a case. Okay. I say this because, and I'm going to say this very carefully, so I'm not influencing students to not move forward with this process. You have to remember, this is a long process. I'm going to walk you through the process. And this is not to deter anyone from not going through the process. All I'm saying is it's a very, very long process, a tedious process that instructors don't like to go through. And I guarantee you, after explaining what you have to do for the appeal, you kind of realize that if there's things that you could do to avoid this going through the process, probably that would be the best thing to do first before you go through it. So just keep that in mind. However, if we're at this point where you're 110% certain that you want to move on with this here, let's go through how to prepare the appeal. The very first thing and the most important thing is to gather your evidence. And the first thing on that evidence is probably going to be what? If you haven't guessed it, your syllabus. Or if it's multiple classes, then your syllabi, right? You got to find that, and you got to pull all your graded assignments, everything project for the class. One thing I'd like to add very quickly in this gathering evidence process, once again, per institution, but I think for the most part, on an average, every instructor is expected to hold records for the class for at least 4 years. Usually, at the very minimum, is 4-5 years. Okay, after 4 or 5 years, instructors could decide to recycle old exams and old papers, whatever you again, depending on the institution's policy, because this piles up, right? And then the second part is actually writing the letter of appeal. The structure for that letter is going to be an introduction, explanation of the situation, what supporting evidence you have, and the request you are making for reconsideration. And usually it is, can you please change my grade? The third part is really just pointing out how to write the letter very carefully. And it's actually some of the common mistakes that students make that I'm going to help you to avoid. Again, innocent until proven guilty. So your tone in the letter has to be very, very respectful. So be very careful as to the tone. It still needs to be, at the end of the day, it is still your instructor. You still need to be very, very respectful and be professional as you're putting this together. Okay? So once again, the 3 things that you need to prepare for your appeal is, of course, number 1, gathering evidence. Number 2, writing the appeal letter. And I went through what needs to be in that letter: introduction, explanation of the situation, supporting evidence, and request for reconsideration. And my third point is avoid the common mistakes. Be professional and be respectful as you put this together. One of the things I will also recommend, by the way, is as you're going through this process, consult with your advisor. You're going to need one. Consult with an advisor, consult with a mentor, because 1, they can guide you through the process. Also 2, as I mentioned, if there are other classes to register for, there's all the strategies on what to do so this whole process does not put you back in terms of your classes that you need to take. Okay, and most importantly, at the end of all this appeal, is it going to affect you mentally, psychologically, physically, right? Depending on what the result is. It's going to change the dynamics of your structured classes. Okay. So, anyway, your appeal is ready. The very first step is submitting the appeal. Find out how it is done. Is it online? Does it have to be done in person? Depending on the institution you are, this is going to be in the student handbook somewhere. You can find out what the process is on submitting your appeal. So the first one is how to submit it. So you submit it. The second part is the follow-up procedure. How do you check on the status? How do you even check to find out if the appeal has been received? Usually, if this was done online, you're going to get a notification. If it's in person, there are some documents that you have to sign, right, to prove that this is going through. So you need to follow up on the procedures to make sure that is gone through, and also, if it's possible, find out when to hear back on the next steps. Let's talk now about the outcomes and the next steps. The possible outcomes are as follows. There's usually three. The first one is everything goes well. Instructor concedes and says, sorry, yes, the student was right. I'm going to reverse the grade. The second part could be the instructor saying, well, technically, this is the grade, but I also see where the student is coming from. I'm willing to do a partial credit to be awarded. Okay. And the third one, unfortunately, is that the appeal can be denied. Remember, I haven't heard anything about reappealing, but if I remember very well, I think I saw something on one of the process where it actually says, if you feel like you do want to reappeal, this is what you have to do. So don't take my word for it, but usually, again, these are the three steps and case close, okay? You either get a reversal of the grade, or you get some partial credit that's been awarded, or it is denied, and the case is closed. All right. Number 2 on my next steps, handling the denial appeal. Trust me, one of the reasons I suggested that you need an advisor for this is basically what I'm about to share with you. If your grade is reversed, great, we're all happy. Even if it's a partial credit that's awarded, it might not be what you want, but at least you have been met halfway and it's great. If your grade is, or if your appeal is denied, this could take a mental toll on you, and this is why I suggested you're talking to your advisor or a mentor to walk you through the process. And third point, or the third outcome on my next steps, is reflection and learning. Whether your grade is reversed, or whether you get a partial credit, or whether your appeal is denied, there's got to be a lesson learned that you take from this. One, I'm sure you're going to learn very quickly is, I hope I don't have to go through this again. Because it's, once again, a tedious and a long process. Okay. Well, I hope this helped. I didn't really want this to take this long, but again, it is an option that I really want the students to understand. And also, at the very minimum, to let you all know that there is a process. By all means, if you feel like you're being graded unfairly, there's a process to go through. Some of the institutions have ombudsmen, by the way, which you can reach out to in this situation, because it is very challenging at times as a student going to your professor, right? It can be very confrontational, and you need to know the necessary steps or what to do if you feel like a grade is not right. So there are people around. Reach out to your ombudsman, reach out to an advisor, reach out to a mentor, or reach out to another professor that you could trust. Okay. So in my closing, very quick 3 suggestions that I have. Number 1 is to please, 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 please always consult with the professor first. It's probably the easiest approach to a grade appeal before you go through all that process. And you have to trust that your instructors are very reasonable. They are human. Most of your instructors are in the classroom for a very, very good and reasonable reason, being that they do care about students and they're not in the business of just failing students just because. I actually don't know what reason some instructors may have. But once again, you might rub the instructor the wrong way, and that will be wrong for that instructor to judge you on that. Okay, so not making any excuses. My suggestion, number 1, is if you can avoid this situation, consult with the instructor first, see what they say, and you can just close everything up, right? They might explain to you exactly why you're getting the grade that you're getting, and some cases, it could be the instructor could realize that, okay, or give you a reason for why they're giving you the grade, and they might offer you some partial credit. It could go in many ways. So in closing, once again, number one is do please consult with your professors if you can avoid the situation from going to appeal. I think usually that's 90% of the time you could come to a very reasonable place with your instructor before going through the appeal. However, if you decide to go through the appeal, number two is you got to have a strong evidence, and number three is preparing for the outcome. So again, your ombudsman, your advisor, your mentor, somebody that you can lean on after or to help you through the process, but most importantly, that will be there for you after it's said and done. Okay. So once again, I hope this helped. Stay tuned always as we continue to explore the evolving landscape of education and your careers. Please, I'm here. Ask Professor Chris. Put your comments and questions in the YouTube sections. I will look at them. I will address it. Remember, we're empowering minds one episode at a time. Don't drink beer, but live beer. Once again, that's balance, eat well, exercise, and rest. Don't forget to subscribe. Put in your comments and your questions. Looking forward to seeing you all again on the next episode of Let's Talk Ed, or a segment of Ask Professor Chris. Happy Veterans Day. Get some rest. Once again, special thanks to all our veterans for all you do.